Do you have any advice for people setting up a podcast, or, maybe it's been going for a long time, but they want to get their branding sorted? Maybe their cover art is a bit dull and they don't have consistent branding across all their content and their sort of logo on the website and things. Can you give any tips on what people should do to stand out and to have a consistent brand for their podcast?
The key word you said there is consistency. And I think that's where people struggle with. When you're in there all the time, working on your brand, you're touching it daily, sometimes or weekly, sometimes daily, people tend to get bored very quickly of their own look, their brand, and they feel like they want to change it, way too quick, but the reality is that people who are viewing you are not spending as much time, studying and in the weeds like you are on your brand. They appreciate it. So if your brand changes, if your look changes every, 3 months, every 6 months, because you're bored of it, you're doing yourself a disservice and the people who are coming onto your platform. A campaign, an advertising campaign usually runs between, a year to 18 months minimum before people start even remembering and recollecting, what they're looking at on a regular basis. So, when you're working on it, it's normal to get bored and want to make a change, but those changes, they're doing you a disservice. And it is only to satisfy your own itch. The reality is, you almost have to create your brand look, your own brand guideline, and be like, what, whether I love it or hate it, I'm sticking to this, and let it run 12 months minimum, if not 18, and our channel has evolved a little bit, but for the most part, we've kept the same font. Trust me, I want to change that font. I'm so sick and tired of it, but, we've kept our 2 fonts. We've kept our color red, of course, with the black, and, we've got, everything has a very impactful, very, in your face look and feel. And it's very consistent. Consistency is key. And I think that's the number one piece of advice I want to, whether you go on Canva and get it done, which you can free, whether you're a Photoshop whiz or Illustrator, depending on your skill set, there's so many tools out there right now that you should be able to, you owe it to yourself and to your subscribers to, create a brand and stick to that brand. Because I think, long-term, the payback is tenfold, 100-fold if it is. But if you're changing it too often, no, it's too hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and looking at yours, you've got that red and the black and white images as well, which you use a lot. Any tips for people putting together their cover art?
Faces tend to work very well and they're captivating, but I find even more so shock factor. For those taglines, people aren't going to read, and sometimes it's challenging to keep, the title or the message on the cover art to 7 words or less. But the reality is, you want to make sure that things are big and bold and have some sort of shock factor to stop people, because often they're looking at this on their mobile device, or it'll come through on their car as they're driving. They don't always have the luxury of listening to podcasts at their computer on a daily basis. So when you're dealing with artwork that is really tiny and needs to be viewed on mobile, it needs to be simple, bold, and the message, you can't have people think about it. So I'd say stay away from long titles. Faces tend to work if you can make that work, of course. And between faces, long titles, and try not to make them busy. And I know that sounds crazy because ours intentionally look busy. But again, if people are spending too much time trying to read it, trying to get the message, you'll lose them. You've got 3 seconds to capture their attention and make them understand that, they want to watch this episode. So make those 3 seconds count.